start with the NBA. Last night, Jacoby Walter and Yves Missy both were drafted into the NBA. Jacoby Walter was drafted by the Toronto Raptors. Yves Missy by the New Orleans Pelicans. There's Baylor putting out the notes on those two. We'll get into a couple more nuggets about the first round that was last night. There's Jacoby Walter. There's Yves Missy. This is a young, raw, who at times was explosive and then yet just learning the game, oozing with amazing talent. And he now, both of them, first time, Craig, you put this up, first time that Baylor has ever had two players in the first round in the same year drafted.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They made a little bit of history last night with that mark right there, and just the fact that they've now had 4 drafts in a row with at least a selection. Just so happens they've all been first rounders, but yeah, that's a great mark for them to hit. And I think 5 or 6 years ago, they were playing really good basketball. They were doing some really good things and having some success. And then they won that national championship. And you start to look around, you're like, what have they not done? Like, what's missing if you're building the ultimate, program? And I felt like the NBA output was really not all that steady or great or really notable. And, you had guys like a Pierre Jackson who got a whiff here and there, but never really established himself. Corey Jefferson, Taurean Prince, eventually was a guy who got into the league and lasted. Like, he's still around at this point. He's playing with the Lakers this past season, but it was always like 2 or 3 guys maybe at one time. And then these past, 4 years, they have really gone on a run. I mean, Davion Mitchell in the first round. He had Jeremy Sohan in the first round, along with Kendall Brown, got drafted in 2022 as well. Keontae George in the first round last year, and then 2 guys last night. So this is their longest streak of draft picks ever at 4 years. This is 4 straight years of the first rounder. This is first time ever, obviously. And then 2 first rounders in the same draft. First time ever for that as well. And you look at like their active roster guys in the NBA, and that's a list that's getting long now. So it's not, Kansas or North Carolina, but damn if they haven't chipped away or built and separated themselves from a lot of other programs. So it's pretty cool to see that. Congratulations to both these guys. I know Missy especially is somebody who you feel like he is totally untapped still in what he can eventually become, but I think the fits are good, best I can tell, and I was just glad to not see guys going to the Jazz again, because it feels like everybody got drafted to the Jazz at one point or another. No disrespect to our BYU fans or Utah fans out there, but just to see some different teams involved was also pretty cool. So, it was a big night for Baylor Hoops and the NBA.
I love the fits for both of them. I think it's going to be really interesting. If Zion can stay healthy and then they can develop Yves Missy, they've already got Brandon Ingram there in New Orleans. That could be really interesting. They also went late, but the good news about that is you went to better teams, teams that don't have as far to go. Jacoby Walter steps into a Toronto team that has Scotty Barnes. It has it's very Baylor and KU heavy, which we'll talk about their latest Baylor edition in just one second. But they've got Ochai Agbaji and Grady Dick already. They're very young and untapped in Toronto, and Jacoby Walter is going to be a fast success in the NBA. I believe Jacoby and Yves make it 11 players, and if Jalen Bridges gets drafted tonight, it'll be 12 current Baylor players in the NBA.
Yeah, and then maybe 1 or 2. I know that RJ Dennis is also eligible to be drafted. Probably won't be, but it maybe hooks up with somebody and at some point gets a shot. But
Ray J.
Ray J. Dennis. All right, so here is the Big 12.
Oh, we didn't mention the trade. Davion Mitchell.
I thought that's right.
Davion Mitchell has just been traded. We were supposed to the Raptors. We were supposed to interview Michael Grange of Sportsnet, who covers the Raptors, and he texted you and said, "Hey, I can go in 5 minutes." And you text me and said, "Hey, he can go in 5 minutes." Jack and I got everything set up to record it, and then I called him like 4 times, and I was like, "Man, I mean." Usually Canadians are much more polite than this. Then I see Emery says, we'll get a Woj bomb here. Davion Mitchell's going to the Raptors. And I was like, that would be why he can't pick up the phone.
I'm going to see if there's a spot for him to slip in at the end, maybe towards the end of the 5 o'clock hour, to help us kind of talk about not just Jacoby, but now the Davion Mitchell trade too. So the Big 12 released their men's and women's basketball schedules. One of the first things I saw was Kendall Kaut mentioning that Baylor will not be headed to play at Allen Fieldhouse this year. That, of course, has become an every-year deal because of the Big 12. They've not done well there, but not many people have. But there's Baylor's home and away as far as home and away, and then the games that are also on the road only and games that are also at home. And so here's the thing, with the conference the way it is, Paul and Craig, there's no algorithm that you're going to escape. You're just not going to escape. There's too many good teams that you just aren't going to get one of those. Man, they got an easy break, and I've looked at pretty much every one of them. If you don't have a K-State or a KU or a Baylor or a Texas Tech or Arizona or whoever it might be, and I know I'm not trying to miss anybody on Houston, you got Iowa State. Everybody's going to have a dose of every one of those teams.
Well, I mean, everybody's going to play everybody, but they're not going to play them twice, which is a bummer. Look, I'd be in for a 30-game Big 12 conference schedule personally, just because it would be good pretty much every single night. I understand that that's not tenable, but it looks like the way that they did it was you're going to get two little beast things, and then you'll get where you have to go to a rival twice or play a rival twice, or two big ones like Baylor has Arizona and Houston twice, but as a reward, they don't have to go to Allen Fieldhouse. Houston has Baylor and Kansas home and away, but they don't, see, I'm trying to think.
Iowa State.
They don't have to, they don't have to go to Iowa State or like some of those things. So it kind of balances. They don't have to go. They have to go to Tech. I'm sorry, but yeah, it balances itself out.
I mean, it's cool. I saw Arizona fans. Wanting to know why they don't have a home-and-home with Kansas right out of the gate. So there's going to be little things like that. But, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to break down with that many teams. You're not going to be able to cover everybody's wishes, no matter how long you spend on putting this together. So, yeah, there's going to be little things like maybe you don't get the home-and-home with the team that you wanted. But I think there's a lot of fun things to chew on for the new schools and the schools that have been around to be – plenty happy with whatever they got. I don't think there's any schedule on here that I've seen at least where there's just people, over the moon upset about their draw. I mean, you're going to, with the amount of games they play, you're going to get some combination of some really great teams playing. No matter if you play them home and away both, or you just get them at their place, or they just come to your place, you're going to get a combination of an Arizona, Houston, Baylor, Tech, and it's going to be good, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be, I think in the case of the Pac-12, better than what you had. I think certainly for the four schools that entered prior to that, it's definitely better than what they had, to the point of it's almost too much better, where it's a big hill to climb up. I don't think that's necessarily the case for an Arizona per se, but I think it's definitely a fun league with a lot of interesting, intriguing matchups. And we saw Colorado; they got a little bit depleted through the NBA draft last night, but they were very well represented. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see how these new teams integrate. Arizona's obviously the headliner, and for good reason. But we're going to get some tremendous matchups, and I'm looking forward to how this league sort of settles in.
There's a lot of different rankings that are being put out by EA Sports College Football 25. We will get to one of them now. It's the offensive power rankings. The top.
Can we get to our super chat first, because it has more to do with basketball?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure that we did that. He said, this is from Nate, $5 super chat. Hi, guys. How many more Big 12 schools will join the NIL basketball tournament in Vegas next year? Is this the future of preseason tournaments? I would say we have no idea of how many they will join it, but I would say that, yes, this is the future of preseason.
Well, we've seen Baylor switch from Maui to there, and Iowa State, I believe, is a part of it. I wouldn't be surprised if there's probably 4 teams eventually from the Big 12. I don't know how many are in it already, but it's become a big deal. NIL money, of course, driving everything that's a part of college athletics.
Yeah, appreciate the super chat, and thanks for watching and listening. And I think it's an impossible question to answer right now, but plenty will be involved. I think it's pretty clear that the future is NIL, tournaments, I guess you could call them, or going to places and getting those NIL benefits for your players. I think that's going to be the way forward. You're seeing some of the more traditional ones get shunned now, with teams backing out to go play in some of the more NIL-heavy tournaments. Like, isn't that the one in Las Vegas, right? That's the big NIL one now.
Yeah,
so
that's the one I think he's talking about.
Yeah, I think that's the one that people are going to flock to, as opposed to going to Hawaii, as we've seen with recent movements. So, yeah, hard to say exactly how many and who any given year, but I think they'll always be well represented, and possibly a rotation, of schools every couple years or so. That remains to be seen, but yeah, I have no doubts that there will be a lot of Big 12 rep with NIL-heavy tournaments moving forward in basketball.
You wonder how those tournaments are designed now, that because some conferences are going to play more games, and obviously the conferences are consolidated and even more difficult than ever before. How many more of those can you go dip your toe into? But if it means you're going to make money, not just by being there, the television revenue, but also that additional money with NIL, you have to go find and scratch that itch when you have the opportunity. And also invited, thank you, Nate, for the super chat. College football 25. These are based on their game. The offensive power rankings, there are 25 teams. There's the list in front of you. We can kind of look at this, chew on this a little bit. Georgia, Oregon, Alabama, Texas, and Ohio State at 5. It kind of surprised me. The thing that surprised me, first of all, Colorado, we know they have some offensive power. Whether or not they can create that remains to be seen, and if they do, good. Missouri, of course. But the one that kind of jumped out at me, LSU loses Jaden Daniels, more wide receivers, and yet they have them right there just outside the top 5.
Yeah, I think that they'll still be good on offense. I think that they, you saw in the bowl game last year, Garrett Nussmeier still, put up a bunch of numbers. I'm surprised Tennessee isn't on this list. I'm surprised that Penn State is anywhere near it. Just given the fact that their offense is pretty bland. And as far as the order of things go, I think some of that a little subjective. I think Colorado's probably a little bit high because we're talking about 2 or 3 guys who are making up that overall offense. But yeah, Ole Miss is too low. Everything else kind of works out for me.
I'll disagree on Penn State. I mean, they scored a bunch of points last year. They got Drew Aller. They maybe weren't top total offense, but I can at least see where they're top 25-ish now. If you want to debate the ranking of being borderline top 10, that's fine. But, yeah, I don't think that they're all that bland. I mean, they scored nearly 40 points per game last year. So, I mean, they lit up the scoreboard and were one of the better offenses in the Big Ten. But, here's my issue with these, and I don't want to be Ebenezer Scrooge, but we're just giving so much free promotion to this video game, and everybody is because it's the dry time of the summer. So they're feeding us, and they have latched on to basically what other content creators started doing years ago, was putting out lists and just saying here, and understanding that people go crazy over lists and love to argue about these lists, no matter how accurate they are or not. And so I'm having these thoughts about EA of it's brilliant promotion and it's a brilliant thing to do, but the problem I'm having with it is it seems like it's one of 3 things. They're either brilliant and they know more about college football than anybody else, that they've got some of these rankings the way that they have them. They don't know what the hell they're doing with this game, and they've got people way overrated or underrated, or they're doing the list thing where they're putting intentionally Colorado's defense, as we'll see, in a spot where you're like, wait a second, and 1,000 people are like, hold on, wait a second, and the impressions go crazy up. So I think it's probably a combination, except for maybe the genius part, because I don't know. I don't want to give them too much credit on them having more insight into how this season's going to unfold than people who literally study it on a daily basis. But it does make for good fodder, and it does create a ton of free promotion for the game and a lot of arguments. And so if it wasn't them doing these lists, it would be everybody else who already does lists that we see all day long anyway. So it's smart on their part. But there are some of these rankings where you're just like, yeah, that has to be for trolling. That has to be trolling there. Offensively, I think that, Georgia's got a lot of people. Oregon, I think, is going to be super exciting. Bama, Texas, I think you can rationalize these. Colorado, I feel like if you're doing best wide receiver quarterback combos, then yeah, they're right there in the top 7. Total offense, I don't know about that. I feel like they've got, I don't know, based on last year, absolutely zero run game and no offensive line. And I know they've attacked the transfer portal and whatnot, but their offense was basically Shedeur and Travis Hunter and some of the other receivers, and that was the extent of it. Now, was that good enough to score a bunch of points and all that? Yeah, but like top 7? I don't know about that. LSU, to me, I think they could very well still be super explosive, but man, they lost a lot of really talented people.
That's what I said at the start. I
mean, they have a great offensive line. I know they feel like the skill positions are never going to be a concern, and if Garrett Nussmeier pans out, then yeah, they're going to be really good. But like, I'd have to at least back them up a little bit just based on the amount of talent that they lost. But there is still a chance where you can go, okay, yeah, they should be pretty good there. Ole Miss is one that I think a lot of people have latched onto as far as just how loaded they appear to be, and maybe they could be a little bit higher on this list. But, good to see Utah, Arizona, Kansas there as far as the Big 12 schools. UCF, I saw some people calling that into question. Go check the rankings last year when they seemed like they were not nearly as good as they might be on paper this year. So I think UCF is justified absolutely in being on this list. And, beyond that, we can whittle it down, but those are kind of my general thoughts on this whole thing in general.
Yeah, I think Tennessee being left off the list is silly, especially given some of the teams that are there. SMU, not surprised to see them on the list. So I'm glad that, somebody, understands what Rhett Lashley does up there, which is score a lot of points. You mentioned losing guys. That's why I wasn't upset that Florida State is at 22. They have a new quarterback, new running back, new wide receivers, new everything. So, that makes sense. LSU didn't get that same kind of thing, but I do think that they'll probably score more points. Miami jumps up because they added a whole bunch of more players. So that makes sense to me. But, Craig, you're kind of dead on Colorado in that, the running back that did all the great things for them, Dylan Edwards, last year, was mostly catching, passes, dump-offs, and screens out of the backfield. He's not there anymore. He's at Kansas State.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it's good to see Memphis in that list, too, as they're ranked right there in between UCF and A&M. I saw that Colorado. That's the first one that jumped out at me in a way like, wait a minute. Same thing with LSU. Again, these are rankings. It's also promoting the game. It also is good fodder. It's good discussion. Everybody has an opinion on it. Look how low, and that's probably as low as Oklahoma's offense. Again, only through their ranking, about as low as their offense would be entering a season, and I cannot remember how long.
Yeah, it's been a little while. I mean, they don't have Lincoln Riley anymore. It's pretty simple. You lost the guy who gave you multiple Heisman-winning trophy quarterbacks in a decade's time. So they don't deserve to be thought of the same way they were thought of, 5-10 years ago. That's not the same team. It's not the same coach. They have a defensive-minded coach, and I understand last year Jeff Lebby, he's not there anymore either. So they could be really good on offense, but they don't deserve the automatic placing of their automatic top 5 every year. Interesting to see USC, though, right next to them. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that could be a situation you debate, although they lost Caleb Williams and others, but that's where Lincoln Riley is now. So if school's going to get the benefit of the doubt, you think it would be USC at this point rather than Oklahoma. So if Jackson Arnold goes out and lights the world up and the new OC's great, then, maybe they return to where they were. But, yeah, this is not that era of Oklahoma football any longer.
All right, I think you have the defense too. Is that right, Jack? The highest-rated defenses in college football. Now, I have not seen the list. Paul mentioned that we have it. There's the first thing I see. And you have Colorado's in there in the top 20 or so, right around number 20. I'm trying to think of anyone that doesn't make sense in there.
Colorado?
Well, no, that's what I'm besides Colorado. I'm sorry, besides Colorado.
There are 2.
And we don't know.
That don't make sense.
All right.
Number 16, the University of Southern California, which does not offer a major in tackling, and Colorado don't make any sense on that list.
Yeah, I mean, Colorado to me is the one that just jumps out because that's giving them a lot of credit for the transfer portal, I guess.
Dion doesn't play for them. They know that, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I talk about when I'm talking about the promotional thing. Like I said, we all gobble up things like this anyways from random people, and then you could have 10 followers and you throw out a list that's crazy enough. There's going to be 1,000 people that jump on that, be like, A&M is not better than we are in local McDonald's fry cooking, that kind of stuff. But yeah, this is to me where I go, this is where they're doing it for impressions, right? Mm-hmm. That has to be, this is where they're doing it to create conversation, is to have Colorado in a top 20 defensive ranking based on what exactly? Because that doesn't make any sense without something pretty obvious putting them there. So, yeah, that doesn't make any sense other than to just create conversation like this, which is what I said at the start of this thing. Who else did you mention there, Paul?
The University of Southern California at 16.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously moved on from Alex Grinch, but I don't know. Is that based on portal pickups? Is that based, like, what is that based on that you would give them that big of a jump because they haven't been known for defense whatsoever? I mean, actually, it's not true. They've been known for being made fun of defensively for the last couple of years. And then finally, Lincoln Riley being forced to make a move defensively. So, yeah, that one, maybe that's a talent thing. I just haven't studied Southern Cal enough to understand that. But, yeah, that's one that definitely doesn't seem to – one of these things is not like the others if we're at least looking at the recent history. But then again, I gave y'all three options of what these lists could be, and they could be a combination of it. And maybe there's just some super smart folks over at EA that just – they're like, y'all wait till y'all see these USC and Colorado defenses going to blow your minds. Beyond that, though, I think it's either just poor list making or it's like watch these radio hosts get riled up.
It does say – and it's specific that these are based on changes, of course, as the season progresses. This is where they have it as of now because no one's played a game. And I don't know if that's going to be affected because the real games don't matter when it comes to the college football game, right? It's how the college football game is played. Teams in the top 10 on both lists. Georgia is number 1 offensively and 2 defensively. Alabama is ranked in the top 10. Oregon in both offense and defense top 10. Texas, both offense and defensive top 10. LSU, no. Miami, no. Colorado, no. Missouri, no. And then I'm looking for that. Is Clemson? Nope, they're not in the top 10. No, they are. They're 10 offense and number 5 on defense. And Notre Dame is not in the top 10 offensively. So there's about 4 teams that are both. And those are the ones who everyone thinks might win the national title.
Yeah, I mean, there's some teams that obviously make a lot of sense. Georgia's, Ohio State's, your Texas's, your Oregon's. That there's a reason why they're all pretty much unanimous top 10 selections. Good to see Utah getting some respect. That's why we expect them to be pretty good. And there's a few of those elite teams that are probably you basically just reeled off a lot of the national championship contenders odds wise. I feel like
I did not mention Ohio State. I'm glad you did.
Yeah, I mean, they're right there at the top.
Yeah.
Kansas State, getting some love defensively as well there towards the end. But, yeah, I mean, I give people the benefit of the doubt. This is based on this year. I don't know how you come to the conclusion based just on this year, though, that you place, again, I don't want to pick on Colorado, but that's why you put them in the list is to have people bogged down on them and talk about them. But even if you're just basing it like last year doesn't matter, well, it kind of does to at least a little bit of an extent of like having an idea of what you're ranking. Otherwise, I still don't know how you're just, if all things are equal, placing them, here and there in these lists as far as especially on defense. But in Iowa, I mean, seems a little low, no?
Yeah. No, look.
I mean, seems a little bit low for the Hawkeyes.
I mean, the one thing we know they can do is stop people.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're not even in the top 10. I mean, what are we talking about?
Exactly. Iowa being 13th on defense is a bit of a, I guess a nudge to the fact that they don't have like the highest recruiting rankings but they always have somebody drafted, like multiple guys drafted off defense in the first 2 rounds of the draft. They stop people. Iowa claiming like they've got this great well-rounded team is like, if Emory and Jack had a bench press contest and their combined weight was 500 pounds, but Emory benched 450 of it.
Why did you have to take him over Jack?
I mean,
Jack's a pretty big boy.
Jack's more of a leg guy.
Yeah. Okay. Iowa outside the top 10, it doesn't make sense. Again, some of these don't, but I wouldn't sit there and guess. They're going to be damn good on defense, and they'll be a little bit better. They can't help but be better on offense, which makes their defense even better because they maybe won't be on the field all the time. Arizona. You guys see them on the defensive top 25? They were really salty last year. Yes, they could put up some points too. Now, they've lost some people, including the defensive coach. Also, the defensive tackle went to Texas. But that's one the chat room brought up, that Arizona was not listed among the top 25.
Well, I think when you lose Johnny Nansen, that's like kind of a blow. But again, we don't know who are making these rankings, so that could very well just be a complete oversight, or that's where Colorado had to fit in to get people going crazy over these lists. But, yeah, I think Arizona's probably being a little bit disrespected, and maybe even by me. I have them as a top 5 team in the Big 12. I know some people might scoff at that and say, oh, they're going to be, top 3, and maybe they will be. But I just do have questions about even if you bring back your Takario Davises and guys like that. They did far better than I think most people could have expected when Jed Fish left in terms of retaining talent. But I think when you've lost some guys up front, you lose Johnny Nansen, like that's maybe where the thought is as far as that goes. But the good news for Arizona is that they might be a sleeper team. Even though they're getting some love, they're not getting love at like being one of the top teams. They're getting love at being like a second-tier type of a team. So there's plenty of room to prove doubters wrong. And even if they were to settle in, and that's really where they are pegged is where they end up, that's still a really good season considering all of the changeover, including the changeover in conference. But I know there's plenty of Zona fans that feel like they're going to be better than they're being given credit for. So they've got some room to obviously show that based on all the rankings we've seen from EA or otherwise. They're getting some love, but not as much as maybe they think they should be.
We'll do one more with the Dennis Dodd story, and then we'll break and come back with Paul and the question he saw that is, and we'll tease it for you in just a second, about if you happen to fall into a coma for about 30 years, what's going on in your mind now based on college football?
One more, 18 LSU defense.
Yeah.
Did we not watch LSU's defense last year?
Mm-hmm. Let's call Mike Scarborough right now, ask him just that one question about if they had the 18th ranked defense in the country, what humiliating thing could we get you to do? And he'd be like, there wouldn't be a humiliating thing you couldn't get me to do, because the thing he told us, and he even said it, I think when you guys had him on like 2 weeks ago or a week ago, whenever that was, that this is the worst defensive line they've ever had.
Yeah, they got everything else. But one thing they always had was great defensive linemen. Mm-hmm. They could there's like 7 that were interchangeable.
Interesting to see Oklahoma State defensively, not offensively, given that if you're going to give them a nod somewhere, you'd think it'd be on offense as opposed to on defense, even though they've got guys coming back all over the place, but just offensively, it's like they're pretty intact. So that's another one. Like, we could do this all day long, but, that's what it's for, is for fodder and debate, and they certainly accomplished that.
Max Olson will join us, by the way. He's